Hey David, you alright, man?
I'm all good. I'm all good. How are you?
I'm all good. Where are you joining us from today?
Just from the head office.
So today I just wanted to get a bit of a breakdown on your services, obviously, and essentially what I'm trying to do here is get some value for the customers and watchers so that they can learn more and understand more about the industry, understand more about the misconceptions, and then when they approach to get their property finance or whatever they want to do, or whatever we talk about today, get what they're looking for essentially. So, just to begin, I wanted to just get going a bit about you, right? So, can you give us a bit of a breakdown on how you originally actually got into property finance? Was it planned or was it more of a natural progression?
Okay. Um, well, to answer that question directly, it was a natural progression, really. So I started in property in 2006 in estate agency. So I was helping people find properties, helping sellers sell properties. And then around 2013, 2012, 2013, I kind of got to a point where I wasn't really enjoying that side of the business anymore. And I wanted something more, but I wanted to stay in property because I'd gained knowledge in property. So I didn't want to lose that. However, I wanted something more, and it wasn't within the estate agency realm. And that's when somebody who ended up being my mentor said, how about you try mortgages? So I thought about it and I thought, yeah, why not? So in 2013, I did my qualifications and passed and was lucky enough to get a trainee role within a much larger business, who I then stayed with until I started my own business in 2020.
Nice. Did you always want to run your own firm?
It's always been in the back of my mind. I've always thought it'd be good or nice to run my own business so I can run my own hours. I don't have to wear a suit, as you can tell. And, I could be a bit more flexible. But that didn't really start coming to the forefront of my mind until one, I had kids, and two, COVID happened. COVID
Nice.
was the turning point, really. I was furloughed for 3-4 months and then I had a choice. I'd been thinking throughout the time I was on furlough, is it worth me going back to work or should I take the leap now? And everyone I spoke to was like, it was the beginning of sort of middle of COVID, and they were like, oh, don't start a business now. Everything's going to tank. Everything's going to be a problem. And I was like, do you know what, though? If I'm going to do it, I may as well do it now. I'm used to being at home. I'm used to working in these scenarios. I think I've got enough contacts, so I may as well just give it a go. And so I took the leap, and I think I was just lucky in the fact that post-COVID, the market went bananas. So I had 2 years of just absolute mayhem until it started to kind of cool down a little bit. So yeah, it was a bit of luck and a little bit of backing myself and just saying, look, if I can't make it now, I'll never be able to make it. And so that's why I took the leap.
Today.
Yeah, I work with a huge array of clients, but the vast majority of them are sophisticated investors, buy-to-let landlords, developers who are looking to purchase land or purchase buildings and then convert them. And a lot of them need specialist types of finance due to the makeup of their earnings or the makeup of their credit history, previous developments that may have not gone according to plan, but they still managed to finish. So all of that thrown together is my typical day. I would say in jest to most people that I deal with problems most of the time. So people end up with me because they've tried everywhere else and then they come to me to kind of fix the problem in the end.
Amazing. So that brings me on to my next question is what actually makes your approach or your model different from others in the market?
I struggle to say no. And I think that's where I differentiate from others. If somebody comes to me for help, I like to give them a solution. Now, the solution may well be, you can't do this, but you can do this. But it's just that differentiation between if you go to someone and they go, nah, can't be done. I might say to you, it can't be done like this. Have you considered this? Or we can't do it now, but in 12 months' time, we should be able to do it if we put these things in place. So the way that I do things is very much a solution based. And I would rather give you a solution, even if it's not what you want to hear today. I'd rather say, can't really do it, but rather than just close the door and say, no, can't help.
Right. So for the next question, right, I'm kind of trying to understand if you are seeing any shifts in the property finance market right now, anything that stands out.
Shifts in the market. I'm definitely seeing a lot more people with adverse credit. So the last 5 years has been tough on a lot of businesses. And obviously, I don't want to mention COVID again because it's like a broken record, but COVID did have a knock-on effect to how we are now and how people's credit history has been affected. And it did take some people a long time to recover from those effects. And because it was within the last 6 years, some of those effects will still be on people's credit files. They may still have problems with paying certain things back due to decisions they made for survival back then. And so I'm definitely seeing a lot of people come out of the woodwork because a lot of people's products are coming to an end, or the build costs in the last 24 months have increased exponentially for certain things. So there has been some very well-versed developers who are coming to me and going, this just hasn't gone the way I wanted it to go. We were supposed to have finished 18 months ago, but there's been this delay and this delay, then this cost went up and then this, and now the lender's calling in the loan and we don't know what to do. So I'm seeing a lot more of that. So there's a lot of fires that I'm trying to put out because of not necessarily people's decisions, but really just things that are outside of their control contributing to the negative factors. And that's what I've seen a massive increase in the last 6 months. I would say people's attitude to bridging is much clearer now. Think where lenders, regular high street lenders, are not lending on property. So if you're doing a buy-to-let, for instance, most lenders will say, in fact, all lenders on a term product will say that it needs to be in a lettable condition from completion. And so if you're buying something that definitely needs work, it is very unlikely that a normal term lender will give you a buy-to-let mortgage for you to then complete, then go and do the work and let it out. They need it lettable from completion. So more and more investors are understanding that you've got to utilize bridging to be able to acquire the asset, do the work, and then refinance. So that's what I'm seeing is it's the understanding of its role in the market which is good for everybody, because it just means that we're not wasting our time doing applications that really we know aren't going to go anywhere. I can say up front, this place is derelict, or it's full of damp, or, it's been trashed. Lenders aren't going to lend on it. We're going to need to bridge to be able for you to acquire it.
Yeah. So are you seeing demand from a particular type of client at the moment?
Other than sort of normal regulated remortgages, which I do all day, every day, the biggest upturn I'm seeing is investors who are increasing their portfolio, but in a slightly different way. So rather than buying a small unit, a flat or a house or whatever, they're looking at how do I leverage my current portfolio to be able to buy enough of a project for it to maintain profitability. So increasing numbers of multi-unit freehold blocks. So buying a block of flats with, say, 6 flats in it, and either creating leases or expunging the leases and buying the whole thing and then letting them all out. That can be a bit more profitable than just buying one unit. Or HMOs. I'm seeing a lot of people converting regular houses into HMOs. So for either students or for professionals, because housing is so expensive in certain areas, you can't rent a 1-bedroom flat by yourself. So you're going to have to rent a room in a property with shared amenities. And that is just the reality of certain areas. And I live in the Southeast. I work in the Southeast. The vast majority of the business that I do is close to London or close to major cities. So close to Birmingham, close to London, close to Manchester, close to Leeds, and those type of metropolitan areas are becoming more and more expensive to live in. And so therefore there is an increased demand from HMO renting. So that's what I'm seeing from an appetite perspective, especially from investors. Purely my opinion, I think it is a little pinch of everything. House prices continue to increase and will continue to do so all the time that we don't build enough houses. We will never build enough houses, no matter what the government says. We will never build enough houses to keep up with the demand. We've got higher rates of immigration, which is obviously then increasing the need for further housing. That on top of the economic challenges that businesses are having from a tax perspective and also from a cost perspective, which is then meaning that they need to either employ more people, employ less people, which then means that if your people are losing their jobs, they're going to need more council housing and stuff like that, which just doesn't exist, and they're not building it quick enough. All of these factors do run into the property market. The biggest issue we've got is that all of those should fall into a demand in private sector housing need. But what successive governments are doing, and now I'm not talking red, blue, yellow, whatever. I'm just talking about successive governments, regardless of your political leanings. Successive governments have made it harder and harder for the individual who has means to be able to invest in property to provide that housing because of the extra tax that we have to pay or the extra legislation that you have to find. Now, I'm not saying that any of this stuff is bad because the end consumer is now more protected than ever, which is the right thing to do. However, it has come at a cost, and therefore, because of that, a lot of landlords are coming out of the market. Now, most people would say, well, that's good because that means more stock for first-time buyers. The reality is that stock is still at a price that isn't being bought by first-time buyers. And so, because of the other things that I was discussing and the constant need for more building that they aren't doing, it's constantly
imbalance.
An imbalance, exactly. So therefore,
I get it.
We're now just going to consistently see these issues, and it's very difficult to tackle. And I don't suggest for 1 minute that we shouldn't legislate the landlord industry at all. I don't think it should be unregistered. I think there have been some very unscrupulous landlords in the past, but the problem is that they're dealing with a minority problem and then hitting the majority, but they're not providing a solution. And that's the biggest problem with successive governments, is that there's no solution to that problem. Tax more, legislate more, fine. But those houses and those rooms are still needed by your population. And due to the population growth that we are having, regardless of whether you agree with it or not, it's happening. We're having an increase in population. That need is even greater. And all we're trying to do now is make it so difficult for people to invest in property that we can't find a solution. So there is no solution, or it's not, at least not being given. And so, there will be a consistent problem.
So, David, I'm going to shift this away from the market, right? Just a bit about you as a business owner, right? So I kind of want to highlight any challenges you've actually been facing as a business owner in property finance recently.
Challenges, really, it's been getting completions. So getting things over the line in a fast enough turnaround. What I've noticed over the last few years is that the legal side of the business has slowed down. Quite rightly, there's a lot of legal aspect to this job, and therefore a lot of work needs to be done. And solicitors always get a bad rep. I don't have a problem with solicitors at all. They always get a bad rep for holding things up. They aren't holding things up. They're just merely making sure that they're doing the right thing for their clients, whoever their clients are. Because of the volume of transactions, the amount of extra legislation that they have to ensure that they cover, and potentially unrealistic demands upon them, and unrealistic demands from clients, unfortunately, that has led to severe delays. And because of that, then that hits all businesses at all levels from a cash flow perspective. So that's been the biggest challenge that I found over the last 12 months, is actually getting things. We used to turn our pipeline every 3 months, and now it's more like every 4 months. And that may not sound a lot, but rather than being paid 4 times a year, you're now being paid 3 times a year. And so that can cause some issues until you get around.
Yeah, cool. So on the other side of that, what are you kind of doing really well that's helping you grow despite the market conditions?
I think it's the fact that I will always give everyone some time to explain their problem, and then I will try my best to find a solution. So I think because I've got a bit of a name for myself for at least giving it a go, I've continued to get a consistent stream of clients come through. And some people I can't help, and that's the name of the game, but I'll always tell people as quickly as possible if I can't. And I think that's why I've maintained a level of busyness from a business perspective.
So in terms of the next 12 to 24 months, what do you kind of see coming down the track for property finance?
I think there will be an increased utilization of bridging from the private landlord sector, who will start to purchase properties that are in need of work. There will be a large amount of older landlords getting out of the sector. And so what I believe will happen is, rather than someone getting in and trying to buy 1 or 2 units max, they will start to be looking at full portfolio purchases. And I think, over time, a new set of private landlords will come about, but what they will have to do is they will have to provide housing at a better and so whereas the old-fashioned landlords have just kind of left things to rot, they will be selling those off at a bit of a loss so that then the new landlords can get in, do them up, and then provide better housing. I think we're going to see an increase in HMOs. I think we're going to see an increase in like the Airbnb economy. So I keep on thinking sheltered housing, but that's definitely not what I'm thinking.
Social housing.
So no, it's not going to be social either. It's just like short-term lets, basically. So people
Letting.
and also because of the way people work now, I think a lot of people are not necessarily moving. They're staying where they are, but they might end up working from home, but then they'll have to go somewhere for work. And a lot of people's head offices are moving away from London and going to, say, Birmingham or Manchester or Leeds or whatever. And so I think the short-term let economy is going to keep on increasing, which will be a higher profit business for these investors, but they will have to own a lot more units than what our previous generation of landlords will. So previous generation landlords could probably own 2 to 3 units max and make a good profit and living for the rest of their lives. I think most landlords now will probably need to see 10 to 15 of a mixture of types of units to really start seeing a full-time income over the next 5 to 10 years.
Would you say there's going to be, or it's much harder to enter the market at this point then?
Cost-wise, it is. Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely difficult because it's not just about finding a 25% deposit. You've got all the extra stamp duty, you've got the additional stamp duty. Solicitors are more expensive, quite rightly, to ensure that they get the job done. If you're using bridging, the cost of bridging is quite high. So it's not right for some people, but yeah. And also you will need a bigger deposit. It's not just finding the 25%. With bridging, it's the 25% plus if you're having retained interest, you've got to take that into consideration as well. So really it's 30 or 35% deposit you need. So yeah, it's not as simple as it used to be.
So what do you wish more clients understood before they started a conversation with you about funding?
That you can't have everything yesterday. Things take time. And unfortunately, a lot of clients that I deal with expect everything done yesterday. And it's just not realistic. So time is that really most clients that I deal with are either clued up or they're not clued up. And I'm not really that bothered whether people aren't or not. I can explain things. That's my job. But it's knowing that these things, you can't get things done as quickly as they potentially would like. And I always try my best to, explain to people that these things can take longer than we want. However, it sometimes does fall on deaf ears because also they can go into situations where they think they can get it done in time or they get given a hard completion date and it's just unrealistic to get it through underwriting or get it through legals in that amount of time. And then they're under pressure and they then put you under pressure. But it's I think time frames are something that everybody needs to relook at. And I think auction houses need to also start, waking up to the 21st century and realizing that it's unless you're buying in cash, 28 days isn't long enough to complete a transaction. Now, I've seen stuff complete in 12 days before, so you can do it, but you've got to have everyone on the ball, and it's so rare to have every single element on the ball that I feel like, especially auction houses, definitely need to kind of think, we'd like to complete in X amount of time, but we have an automatic extension by another 28 days or whatever, because it just then gives everybody a little bit more breathing space just to get everything done correctly. Otherwise, things are getting rushed, things are getting missed, and people are going to get into serious problems. I would say that it's quite difficult to do this, but one of the reasons that I've maintained a certain level of business is because I don't necessarily look at what's happening this month. I look at what's happening in 6 months' time. So because I was also a sales manager at a previous firm, I was always able to kind of sit down and forecast, and you can kind of work out based on your pipeline where your business is at in the next 3 to 6 months. And so I would always urge everybody I know everyone's got to eat, so everyone's got to look at what am I earning this month, and that is important. But it's just as important to sit down and go, right, how can I build my pipeline in the next 6 months so that I know the 6 months after that is going to be okay. So it's very much this type of job is very long-term pipeline building. Anyone who tells you that you can earn, 6 figures in your first year as a mortgage broker is lying to you, because you can, but it's very difficult, very difficult. So you've got to look long-term. You really do.
The learning curve.
Absolutely, yeah. And there is a learning curve, and you could be, obviously the second part to that is that you can be the best mortgage broker in the whole world, but if nobody knows about you, then it's very difficult to, do your trade. So marketing is just as important. And that can be across many different facets: paid advertising, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, word of mouth. It just depends on how long you've been in the industry. If you're brand new to the industry and you're quite young, you're probably going to be up with the tech stuff. So you're going to be able to go on TikTok and Instagram and all stuff like that. But if you've been in the industry for a long time, you've probably got a lot of word of mouth stuff. And so you can utilize that. But you've got to do a little bit of everything. You've got to get a lot of different fingers in different pies, if you know what I mean. If you just rely on one sole way to make money, you're going to slowly run out. So it's definitely about doing lots of different types of marketing, introduced business and paid advertising, a bit of everything, and also upskilling. And if you can't and don't have time to upskill, finding the right brokers to help you with the stuff that you can't do. So I do help some brokers with their specialist finance because they don't have time to learn it. So they just give it to me and say, can you do a bridging loan on that? Or can you do a commercial mortgage on that? Because they just simply are too busy doing what they're good at, which is regulated stuff. And they pass over their unregulated stuff because they just don't have time to learn it. Well, it's much business as usual, if I'm honest with you. However, we've increased our admin headcount from 1 to 2, and we have got another 2 joining us in the next couple of months. So we should have 4, which means we can increase our capacity 4 times. And so that does mean that we will be able to just help more people. So I'll be able to have more appointments, and I'll be concentrating on doing the front end with all the case managers doing the back end stuff. So that's really where we're going this year. My main focus is on development finance this year, helping developers get their projects up and running, really. So
Nice.
So that's the thing.
Nice, man. This has been a great chat, man. And for the viewers, I just want to let them know as well, if they want to get in contact with you or that they've got some value and want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
You can find us online on our website, it's mortgagefit.com, or you can find us on Facebook at The Mortgage Fit. We're also on Instagram at The Mortgage Fit, and you can just pop your details in and it'll come straight through to me.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Cheers.
That's all right. No worries.